driving the cost.
Because you just never know how much power they have.
They want to do things. That's the best dad joke of the night.
You know, and I'm like, chief of staff, like, you just got here. Like a monopoly as well. We are forced.
We bring you the best brains from the Bay and beyond. You guys are pretty good at this. So we're very fortunate to get to demystify emerging technology with some of the best brains. So we've got policy, we've got business, and we're going to learn a little bit about what tomorrow looks like. Because if we think about it, it's got a lot of names, right? Like moolah, cheddar, bread, scratch, cold hard cash. But what is money actually? Is it a unit of exchange? Is it a measuring stick? Is it a tool to be leveraged? Maybe a little bit, all of this and more. So without any further ado, perhaps we can do some quick intros. Fiona, would you kick us off, please?
Okay, Fiona Ma, California State Treasurer, but I started out as a real estate tax accountant working with one of the big 8 accounting firms. And then I quit, started my own practice, became president of a small business association, and that is when my eyes were open to politics, how difficult it is to start and run and be successful in a small business. And then sooner or later, I was doing all sorts of political things, getting involved, ran for my first office, San Francisco Board of Supervisors in the Sunset District, 2002 to 2006. Then served in the State Assembly, 2006 to 2012, State Board of Equalization, 2014 to 2018, State Treasurer in 2018, and reelected in 2022. So, like many of you, you're all serial entrepreneurs. I am a serial politician. This is what, what I'm good at. This is my calling, and, I'm in it until you all don't vote for me anymore.
But you got a lot of votes. You got a lot of votes. Cool. Well, thank you. It's a real pleasure to have you here. Jeremy, please.
Fiona mentions calling, right? And I don't know what you guys wanted to do when you grew up, but I would say the young Jeremy didn't think that he was going to spend the height of his career working and running a B2B payment company. Does that sound exciting? It's okay. It's okay. But here's the reality. So I spent 20 years in technology. It changed my life. My family grew up with nothing. Neither one went to high school or college. And technology was a massive economic empowerment for me personally. And what it does really well is you get to imagine the world not as it is, but as it could be. And what I will tell you is money is one of the most important centers of society, and it's fundamentally broken. And I think we all feel that. The opening song was about the robber barons. And what is that really saying? That the economic uncertainty that we often all feel feels wrong. And so my day job is I run a company called Paystand, which is the largest and fastest growing business-to-business payment network built on decentralized and open finance. Today we are a company of size and scale. We do about $20 billion in payment volume. We support about 1 million businesses across the US. The Federal Reserve recently told me, I was surprised to get a call, and they said, "Who are you guys?" And I said, "That's a scary question." And they said, "Well, you showed up on a list. You're 2% of all commercial account-to-account payments in the US, and you're using this crazy thing called Bitcoin. We want to know what you guys do." And it turns out that we help drive the real industrialization of America. So we service manufacturing companies, supply chain companies, logistics companies, people who are building real goods and services across America. And then my kind of nights and weekend job is we take our profits, because we think that financial service companies should be doing better, and we give it back to a philanthropic effort called Paystand.org, which we are the primary backers of a number of places around the world. When you hear about Bitcoin and financial inclusion, when you see that it's being used in places like El Salvador and Central America and Africa and the Global South, and it is money for the people, the other 7 billion people on the planet, not in this penthouse, but for the people who are left behind. We are the primary commercial backers for that. And so we see Bitcoin used in the real world for real companies and for real people around the world.
Beautifully put. Thank you so much. It does seem to be kind of like an important element, right? So half of adult Americans have more credit card debt than they do in their savings, which is a little bit scary. What are the things that folks
maybe don't understand, because it feels like now is an incredible time to create value, and that accessibility is being driven by consumers, right? Traditionally, tech innovation is military or big government, but it feels like the opportunity is now. What are people tapping into that allows them to get to the next level these days, would you say?
Well, I would say, going back to savings, right? My parents started saving for me, my brother and sister, as soon as we were born for college. And I did not have any student loan debt, and I was able to use the extra money for a master's to start a business or buy a home. And I decided to buy a home at 22 years old. And that's the way we generate wealth. These days, the kids are not saving. They're depending on their parents' plastic. And then after they graduate, they have all this high student loan debt, and they can never start their life, right? Their credit score is ruined. They can't buy a house. They're never going to be able to build equity the traditional way. So tech is a little different, I think. You don't maybe need a good FICO score. You don't need to have a house, right? You just have to have,
Get lucky.
yes,
Get a little lucky.
exactly. Get a little lucky with some investors. But traditionally, for most of us, we should get back to kind of those basics. And unfortunately, I used to work. I started working at 10 years old. How many of you let your kids work and tell your kids to go work 10 years old? Go babysit, go mow someone's lawn, right? It's not like that anymore. And so that work ethic, I think we've kind of lost in this next generation, but that's just my concept. I'm still very traditional about money, as you can see.
Well, I think those of us who get a little bit older, we all start to saying the work ethic's not there, and I totally agree with Fiona. And one of the things she said, though, is she implied there's three main use cases of money, and the first one is store value, which is what Fiona's talking about. And a story I'll give you, because I very much empathize with this, is store of value, wealth creation in America was oftentimes, if you were going to climb the ladder, was going to store your value in buying a home. That's how. So my family, my mother came over the border, their side of the family from Mexico. My dad had been here, his family for about 150 years. Neither one had been to high school or college. They worked in the fields, and they were the person who was like at the front of the Home Depot. And so for them, they saw two things that mattered. One, you want to see your kids go off and do better than you. That's the American dream. So that's get education, get in technology. I was lucky to do that. And then spend 20 years doing all that work. The sort of, I'd say, the handshake with America is if you buy the home, you do a little better. What happened was my parents did that for 20 years, and then I left and I was in New York in 2008, and then this crazy thing happened in 2008. We call it the financial crisis, the great financial crisis. Some of you are too young to remember, but it was this crazy things where the banks, part of their job, kind of let us down, and ultimately millions of Americans lost their home in that financial crisis, including my parents. And I remember sitting at the floor of Wall Street, and people were throwing rocks at the banks. And the question was why? Because they felt like Main Street had let them down when Wall Street had gotten ahead. And so for me, I wondered, what was I, the tech guy now, or the person who saw their parents who were trying to store their value and get ahead lose their home? And this is why I actually think it's not that young people aren't working hard. It's that the system itself is actually like fundamentally not fair for them anymore. And why? Because the store of value is actually not there anymore. Why is that? Well, if you look back 2 generations in 100 years, the dollar has lost 99% of its value in 2 generations. That's a problem. And if you think, and that's the high watermark. If you go to other places around the world, today when you look at inflation rates that are 5, 10, 20%, you cannot have economic empowerment improvement, and the fundamental root problem is money. And so you can hope that the property values go up, but that's just because we're using it for some kind of store of value. But ultimately what we need to do is get to sound money, sound economic principles, a better financial infrastructure. So the thing that we told our parents, which is you work hard, you do better, you save more, your incentives are there, and you will ultimately get ahead. Of course young people are disillusioned because that system is not working for them.
It's interesting you say that because they can be measured. In fact, if anybody's familiar with the Gini coefficient, this is the measure of wealth inequality across the world. And I'd like to think that things are getting better through policy and through better understanding. In fact, recently there was the Genius Act,
Yes.
which helps us understand a little bit about stablecoins. In fact, stablecoins are so awesome because I feel like they build a bridge between crypto and traditional trustworthy finance. So maybe can we talk a little bit about that? Where do you think that will take us next?
Yeah, so there's a bill right now going through the legislature where it will allow people to pay their taxes with crypto, right? With Bitcoin or whatever. I mean, I don't understand why people that need to pay their taxes can't cash out their Bitcoin first and then pay their tax. But, you know, I'm agnostic to it. I'm like, there's a worth, there's a value. You want to pay me in gold? You want to pay me in cash? You want to pay me in, you know, Bitcoin? I'm okay with it. So,
Delicious cupcakes.
I mean, if it's worth something and it pays your tax bill, yeah, I'll take your delicious cupcakes.
It does seem like things are becoming increasingly digital. It's like, you know, even my piggy bank did a software update recently. So it's like having this understanding of where the needle is moving. How can folks leverage these trends to be more successful and create peace of mind and a foundation for themselves and for their family?
Yeah, well, I would just say, you know, what, 15 years ago, nobody thought people would give a credit card on Amazon and buy all this stuff with that trust, right? People are, you know, fundamentally, they want their privacy, they don't trust, but yet we spend every single day, we give our credit card out just to buy stuff. So things are changing the way we do business. In certain countries like Asia, you can have one card that you can tap for all sorts of transportation, whether it's riding on the underground, riding on the bus, getting in a taxi. China doesn't even have any cash anymore. So things are changing, and we have to just change with it. We just can't be like, everyone has to, you know, be on the dollar and everybody has to pay this way, you know? I mean, it's just, you know, behavior is also changing.
One of the things I like about what Fiona's describing is she's talking about the second principle of money, right? So the first principle of money is store value. The second principle of money is medium of exchange. Now, this is also an interesting thing where the technology is now catching up to where society is. So here's the problem with the current system of medium of exchange. So my class of customers are not some crazy crypto bros. You know, I service like large farms in the middle of America. Why do they use a thing like us? Well, what are their options? The normal medium of exchange in the United States is generally using technology from the 1970s, which last time I checked is before the internet. So the vast majority of companies today, this is 90% of all US business-to-business companies, which is the largest part of GDP, what it uses is three things. Either first, checks. That's about 40% of all commercial volume in the US today. That was invented in the Middle Ages, and I don't know how many of you guys use checks anymore. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. If I ask the college crowd, they look at me like, what's that? No comment. But so you have 40% checks. And then you have the remainder is principally ACH and wires, which are those old little like digits that are at the bottom. Those were invented in the 70s. They're very slow and very manual. If you're a big company, you don't want to just send $1 million and hope it's there in 5 days, but that's actually what happens. And then the smallest sliver in my world, in the corporate world, is credit cards. But there you have two cartels that own 90% of the digital volume. Those two cartels charge 3%, which is a toll charge or a tax. You can almost think of them as OPEC. They force that requirement on everyone. And so if you think about what that means as a tax to US GDP, if you're a large company that's employing thousands of people that are really important to our economic system, and your choice is use something from the Middle Ages, use something that you set it and hope it gets there in 5 days, and you have an army of people, or paying like some tax. I'm fine paying the US government some tax, but I don't know if I'm going to pay some private cartel 3% of my tax, and most of those companies, maybe their profit margins are 5 or 10%. So if they give away half of their money to somebody who's putting their hand in the cookie jar, like that makes zero sense. So that's where, this new tech, whether it's stablecoins, blockchain, Bitcoin, the new tech is to be able to move money at the speed of light, because money is just software now. People in the government can just press some ones and zeros and we have more of it. It can move at the speed of light. It can move intelligently because money can now be programmed, and it can move at effectively no cost, because how much does it cost you to send an email? nothing. So that's what it should happen. That's the world people like, in my cohort are building. And we think that's really important to the economic future of the US.
So I just want to jump in because we are in the budget right now, my office, $1 million to try to figure out it's a public bank, trying to help the underbanked instead of going to payday loans or, cash checkers, how they can cash their check without having to pay these fees. And so I know a couple of you said, hey, how about this tap card? You've got some sort of system. We only have $1 million. If you can come up and let me know if you have a solution, I'm all open.
Look at that, the government's open for that. That's something to applaud, right? Yeah, I think one of the things that Fiona's talking about that, again, is not as well understood here in the Silicon Valley and the beautiful high-rise, but, the unbanked and the underbanked are not only in the global south, but in the U.S. as well. So, and this is a really, really important constituency because, you can argue whether or not banks or the financial infrastructure is evil. That's a conversation for beer. But the practical reality is, oftentimes it's just not economically viable to bank them. So we have less than about 15% of California is underbanked or unbanked because it's just too expensive to bank some of these folks. And so you need this what we call open financial infrastructure to empower these folks to enter into the digital economy. That's really important. So one of the things we do on the foundation side on paystand.org is we help these small communities and we catalyze them by giving them access to financial literacy and financial tools that basically all they need is a cell phone. So for example, one of my favorite programs that we support is something called Digital Nest. Digital Nest is kids like me, so they're sons and daughters of farm workers that are US citizens, but their likelihood of getting ahead is very difficult. And so what Digital Nest does is put technology centers, these are kids in the Central Valley, in Watsonville and Salinas, and then they put education and technology centers for them to learn skills, computer skills. And then when we come and so we teach them, hey, you learned a skill with a mobile phone or you learned a computer, we're going to teach you the Bitcoin side and we're going to teach you the digital asset side because if you know technology and you have access to education and now you have access to banks, you can bring that back to your parents. You can help them send money to their families overseas. This helps the overall economy. It's able to be taxed. And this is overall really good to create what we call a circular economy, which was to get digital money flowing into the places that oftentimes can't because they're unbanked or underbanked.
Yeah, and I love the idea of having an infrastructure that is automated, that is reportable, this digital ledger that we can reference historically. I feel like it's going to take a lot of the folks in the middle, like the middleman out, and then all of a sudden you've got more margin, more meat on the bone. And Fiona, if we were to zoom out a little bit and look at a large infrastructure problem like replacing the grid. They say that'll cost over $1 trillion, but it's something that is clearly necessary, especially with the increasing demands on infrastructure for artificial intelligence. So, how would we fund such a thing? What does that look like in very broad strokes for folks who maybe don't understand the in and outs of policy?
Okay, so the energy sector is kind of like a monopoly as well. We are forced to be with one of these large providers. And so if we are going to develop the amount of energy that we need, we're going to have to think outside the box. We're going to have to do microgrids. We're going to have to think about alternative sources of energy. And we cannot be dependent on whether the big companies are ready to allow us to go on the grid. It's going to take years. They don't have money, so they all want to raise our fees. Nobody wants their fees raised. So we're going to have to figure out how to kind of democratize everything. Do it independently, off-site, closer to the buildings, for example, and not have to depend on using the big companies. Because we're just not going to get there. There's not enough money. There's not enough time. And you guys are all working much, much faster, all you battery storage technology people, that we could really get there, but for having to connect to this grid problem.
Well, it's heartening to know that we've got a champion like you to function on all of our behalf. So you wanted to chime in here too?
Yeah, I think one of the things, so Nick jumped to a really cool topic that you're championing, but it might not be obvious why we're talking about the future of money and we jump to energy. energy and money are completely connected. So, money is the storage of our work, and where does our work come from for our energy? That's kind of a philosophical question point. But at a more practical level, when you think about energy abundance, so there's a straight line between the access of energy that a society or community or culture has and their GDP. Straight line. So you look at a place in Global South that has little access to energy, their GDP is much lower. You look at the highest GDP places in the nation, in the world, highest energy access. So one of the interesting things about money is incentive alignment. I would say that our current monetary system is sometimes doesn't have incentive alignment. One of the things that makes Bitcoin so unique is it's all about incentive alignment. And one of the areas it's incentive alignment is around energy. Why? Because the network, the decentralized, democratized network, runs on servers. Okay, Bitcoin servers all around the world. People, whether they're in Iowa, Nebraska, or in California, or in Nigeria. And those servers, they use energy, but they use energy in a way that's not well understood. And the incentive is if you run our network and anybody participates, it's like anybody participating in the open internet, you can actually get, an economic use. So it's not Visa and MasterCard anymore, but anyone can participate, from the farmer in California to the Nigerian.
Except only 5% of folks globally have participated in Bitcoin, so we're still early.
We're still early, but we have probably 100 million within the U.S. and regions, neighboring regions. So it is getting to significance. Now here's the energy point, though. What the Bitcoin servers do is the AI companies, what they have is they have to have really high demand energy, and it's important for us to progress in technology, have access to energy, but they have to be in very expensive computational centers. What makes the Bitcoin servers very, very unique is these are monetary servers that can sit anywhere. So they can sit in microgrids, and they actually are some of the highest sources of renewable energy in the world. Why? Because wherever you put them, you have an economic incentive for those servers to exist, to power the network. And so where most people are now putting them is in what we call trapped energy. Trapped energy are places where it might be a methane field where the energy company was actually going to have to pay to be able to clean up the CO2 was in the air. And what they do is they actually trap the carbon monoxide and the methane, and then they put a server right on stat. Another area is in places in the country that we're involved with, huge solar farms. Now, those solar farms can't go to AI servers because you need on demand, and solar works only when it's sunny. And so you need to be able to absorb the energy when it's created and then give it back to the grid to stabilize the grid when people turn on their ACs. And so
It's funny you mentioned that. So somebody recently asked Elon, they said, what should my high schooler be studying? He said, batteries.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and what a Bitcoin server is effectively a battery, because it's actually storing energy, and then transmitting energy is really, really expensive. But if you have an economic incentive to actually create more energy abundance, you can create more hydro, you can create more wind, you can create more solar, you can create more clean energy, you can put it at the source. That creates an economic reason for those either microgrid creators or even the big utilities to actually expand their energy access. You can absorb the off usage, and then you give it all back to the community. And this is happening all over the world. It's probably one of the most interesting, misunderstood parts about Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So why aren't we putting more Bitcoin or these servers around?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the most interesting things that's happening in policy making right now is state competition is a good thing. So in one of the areas that you see is those states are actually competing now to be able to say, hey, we have trapped energy in these places. We want to increase grid access. And so you might have, one state that's got access to clean energy and clean gas competing with, a large solar build out or a large wind build out. And then they're coming to companies that we partner with and saying, hey, we can give you energy at wholesale costs as long as you do demand response, which means you give it back. You're commercially regulated to give it back when everybody has AC. So instead of having rolling blackouts and rolling brownouts, increase capacity and then give it all back when it's needed. That's the goal.
Yeah. I mean, we're starting to do that regionally, right? Like with different states, Oregon, Washington,
That's right.
Nevada, because
right.
we all have different energy sources, and if we could better manage and share, then, it's better for everybody. Yeah.
We chatted a little bit about the Genius Bill, which is interesting. It kind of reminds me of when Mark Zuckerberg was in a congressional testimony a couple of years ago, and one of the senators said, "Well, Mark, how does Facebook make money?" He's like, "Well, we sell ads." Like, come on, get the program, guy. But to me, what that really underscores is the lack of technical sophistication on our policymakers, yourself not included, of course. So what can
The exception here.
well, come on, San Francisco, she's got it. So what can we do to get people to understand some of like these kind of more technical components to skate to where the puck is going and be out in the race?
Yeah. Well, I think number one, the policymakers have to have an interest in it, right? If they don't have an interest, then they're never going to learn, and they're always going to be like, how do you make money? Facebook. Well, you can just go back. How about like when you had, the phone book, and then you had the advertisements, in the phone book. That's how they made money. Like, this is today's world, right? No, I'm serious, because some of these people, I testified at a cannabis banking hearing in Congress, the first and ever hearing, and it was amazing what I heard from some of these elected officials, like going back to the dark ages, So anyway.
They weren't just blowing smoke then.
No, I don't think they know how to blow smoke. Anyway.
That's the best dad joke of the night, guys.
Exactly. So like me, I don't learn I can't learn in an office off of PowerPoint. That's why if you all call me and you're like, can I come to your office? I'm like, no, I will come to see you. And then as I am talking, you're doing your presentation, I'm seeing, I'm learning, I can ask questions, I can walk around, and that's the way I learn. So invite elected officials to your operations, your companies. Use that as a learning experience. Invite their staff, because some members are just busy, but they depend on their staff. So, treat the staff just like you would treat the member, because you just never know how much power they have in the office and whether that person is going to be the next elected official. So you want to educate them so that they are not in the dark ages like most of us.
So you've both of you had like an illustrious career so far. What are some other tips and tricks that you could give the founders, the funders, the friends, the folks that are tuning in digitally in over 80 countries? What kind of information would you give them as they're building out their career?
Can I touch on her the policy side before we get there? Because I actually think this is one of the inside baseball things that's not really well understood outside of our industry. Is there's a massive sea change that's happened from the policymakers. We've been running this company well over a decade. For a long time, we had to kind of just put our heads down. And on both sides of the aisle, actually, there has been a huge openness to American competitiveness around financial services.
When you say openness, you mean what specifically?
I'll give an anecdote. So one of the gals who used to work for me got called up to the White House a couple years back, and I got to know a bunch of the people that she was going to work for. These are all friends of mine that had worked in tech. And they asked me to do some conversation around Bitcoin and crypto and blockchain. And there wasn't necessarily, it's called intellectual curiosity. It was sort of, how does this fit into the current framework? But the challenge with the current framework was, I think people who are trying to innovate but want to be good actors and actually want to build to creating American competitiveness and global competitiveness, we just need to know the rules. And I think one of the challenges we had for a long time was there was a state of mind where it was regulation through enforcement, which made it hard for those of us who actually just wanted to innovate in the proper ways. And then there was what's called regulatory capture. And I'm a big believer, it's actually good to have clear rules. Government, is good for society, but you need clear rules. And what was happening was the incumbents would basically create regulation that made it impossible for outsiders to get in.
Or in some cases, they would say, "Oh, come in and we'll talk to you about it." And then they would nab them there.
That's right.
So it's kind of like what they call a honeypot.
Yeah, and we have good friends that run big companies that this has happened to. On the other hand now, and again, this is on both sides of the aisle, there is a complete openness and intellectual curiosity. So I've spent a lot of time in the last year with folks that just want to learn. And I think the what's happened since then is a massive amount of policy change driven by, I think a lot of times it's one of the few things that both sides actually will agree on. So, the Genius Act is really about stablecoin infrastructure, which really drives American U.S. dollar dominance, which I think most people want. So that's good. It's about creating more efficient infrastructure. And so, I think you're seeing positive results there. You're seeing at the state level now, multiple states actually doing Bitcoin treasuries, which is really, really fascinating. You have cases like Fiona's talking about that we're well aware of, that multiple states are now sort of driving some kind of financial infrastructure renewal within the state itself. Like, there's a huge open door that did not exist there 12 months ago.
Well, and I would just say, because of everyone, in this ecosystem, I'm trying to create digital lockers, because we are going to create college savings accounts for foster youth who have been in the system for 18 months. And we engage real foster youth that tell us that, a lot of times, their foster parents steal their money, or they kick them out of the house, and then they don't have their ID. So they should be able, because everyone has a phone, they should be able to have all of their birth certificates, their driver's license, their medical records in their phone in case they are displaced. A lot of the homeless kids on the street are foster children. So because of what I'm learning from all of you, that we should be doing this.
Thank you.
Jasmine, I'll give you one more question. And then Jasmine is heading my tech advisory group, and she just developed a digital twin for me, and also on the phone. So now you can call a phone number, ask about one of our programs. It sounds like me. I'm answering all your questions, trying to assist you, because I just can't be everywhere all at once. But the technology is getting really, really good. And so
Questions that your digital twin doesn't know that you do, maybe?
probably yes. But it's catching up. It's much better. Right?
Everybody download Fiona 2.0 right now. There it is. Yeah.
It's got to be a QR.
Yeah, exactly.
So zooming back out to given both your respective careers, what kind of advice would you give to folks, maybe not just focused around money, but around building community and leveraging technology and staying curious? Like, what are some takeaways to help folks get to the next level?
Well, I think, you need to be curious, and you need to try to stay ahead of the curve, right? California just became the 4th largest economy. I do think we are on par to be the 3rd largest economy. So that would be the US, China, and California. Okay, we just surpassed Japan. Only Germany and the US are kind of, California are kind of, on par. But if those of you who live in Germany or work in Germany or have companies in Germany, they don't have the same philosophy that California does, right? So
The California.
Oh, spicy.
You're alive.
Is it cut in production, huh?
I think people talk about like splitting California into a number of different states because we're so big, which I don't agree with. We have 58 counties. They're all different. One cannot, survive on their own, but together we are stronger. But seceding is going to take a lot. So let's not waste our time right now. Let's just work on getting California together, stronger together, working together, fighting, standing up, resisting.
There's the Unitarian message. Like, just not turn 75 Californias, huh? Yeah, I mean, look, for me, I've lived all over the world, but I'm a product of California, and one of the things I think is young people have largely been disillusioned, with, I think, opportunity in general. And so, one of the things I'd say is we all live in the Gilded Ages in a way. Like, at what time in human history could somebody who was born at one part of society that had no education from his parents, that had to cross a desert, could be sitting next to Fiona, right? Like, wow. And each one of the people probably that are here in the audience or listening has some version of that story. What an incredible thing. And so the time is now. What I would say is for young people, because, we have about 400 people on our staff, one of the things I've sort of observed is I think we need to regain our ambition to build things with longevity. If you look at the things where you go and visit places, these are things that took 50, 100 years, sometimes multiple generations. And now people go in Silicon Valley and say, I want to fail fast and I want to build something for 2 years and flip it and call it a day. Like, that is not, anything that is meaningful takes time to build. And so you got to kind of put the work and the effort and the energy in. And so I think that's like two things can be true. We can live in the most like important, interesting, exciting, opportunistic time in society, and you got to put in the work to do it. That's gonna take time, and then when you do, I think you have a stewardship requirement to give back. Because the other thing I think young people are disillusioned with is like the notion of capitalism today is almost like, to me, crony capitalism. We talked about the robber barons, which is like, let's go make a lot of money, let's call it a day, and that's it. And innovation is important, but it's got to be innovation that's transformational to society. And so, like, what I want to see is more capitalist companies that show that, like, it's incentive alignment to build a great company that creates great jobs, that creates taxes for the region, and then ultimately gives back for society. We need more like Patagonia type companies. We need more companies that are like part of like what's called social impact, that want to have big missions, want to be transformational to society, and actually have economic impact. I think like you start doing that and you start like closing the divide, the aisle changes, you get them closer together, because we all want to see society better.
Yeah.
So I would just piggyback that, these young people, they'll quit if they're not happy, if their boss, didn't say good morning to them, I've just never seen that. I'm like, how do you quit without having a job? But so they also want to work for companies that are aspirational, that are thinking about them in the long run, their grandkids, not just us, and making money and polluting the air. So I do think that is important. But then also, young people don't want to listen to older people. They don't want to listen to their parents, right? This is what you're talking about, that there is generational knowledge that can be passed down, but they don't have the patience. And so young people come in, they're like, hey, I need a raise. I should be your chief of staff. And I'm like, chief of staff? Like, you just got here. Like, what do you know about this or that, right? Right? Like, find a mentor. We all want to mentor the next generation. We all want to give back, as individuals. And like, the young people should take advantage of that and just slow it down a little bit and not be so like, be open to listening and learning a little bit.
Who are some of your early mentors, and what did you learn from them?
Well, my first boss was John Burton, Senator Burton, and John Burton taught me three things. Number one, remember who brought you to the dance, meaning loyalty. Okay. Number two, stand up, be a voice for those that don't have a voice. And number three, stand up for what is right, even if you're only the one standing. Ooh. And that's what gives me strength when
Wow. You're looking at me, I have no sound bites. Like, clearly, I'm not running for office. That's a really good sound bite. Jeez. Yeah, can you tell me what I'm supposed to say in 10 years? That's good stuff.
We talked a little bit about the American dream, which I feel is alive and well, not just because of the opportunity to create value and build companies, but also because it seems to me like artificial intelligence has the ability, that plus the intersection of plus robotics, has the ability to make goods and services like wicked cheap. Imagine you're paying 75 cents for a coffee instead of $8 at Starbucks. Well, now you don't have to work that hard to have that same standard of living. So when are we going to get the 3-day work week, Fiona?
Well, we've been at 2 days for the state of California. And I think, now that I've gone through that, where government used to be 5 days a week, you have to be there 9 to 5, 1 hour for lunch. Now that we've seen that model, I think it's doable in certain industries and in certain jobs. Like, if I made my staff come to the office every day during COVID, I would have lost the women that had young kids. Right? Because they can't even take their kids to childcare. So what are they going to do? They're going to take their kids to work? Like, it just, the whole thing didn't make sense. So I was able to keep, I think, a lot more people employed. Some of the older ones maybe that were thinking about retiring, and now it's like, oh, I have a little more time at home. You know, I could take care of my, you know, my medical needs. I mean, I know it's helped. I live with my dad, so the days that I'm home, sometimes I have to run errands with him, you know, take him to get his glasses or a new battery for his watch, you know, little things like that. So I think the quality of life has come back a little bit when you don't have to work that 5-day work week, or you have flexible, you know, flexible work schedules.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know if I'd get away with 2 days a week. It'd be hard. So I think, like, for me, what I see is two things. One, just the trend, going back to the young people, like what work opportunity there is, because everyone, I think, is nervous about kind of what does the future hold. There are two transformational things going on in society that are arguably like the invention of fire, which is pretty wild, right? You know, the idea that work is in the midst of changing because of active intelligence is a wild transformation that's hard to imagine the other side. In the transformation of money, also, like, you know, the last transformation of money was something like 8,000 years ago. So these are like two scary things, but at the same time, like, if you're a young person, you are going to outpace 44-year-old Jeremy any day because you're native to that, right? So this is what I try to remind our young people is, like, you know, I grew up, the first startup I was at was in the late 90s, and, you know, we helped invent the kind of hardware tech that went into things like iPhones now and, you know, small, you know, microprocessors. And so, like, I was internet native when my, you know, bosses that were 20 or 30 years older than me were trying to keep up. And so that allowed me to have this massive accelerant in my career. When I see young people, like, their ability to be AI native is insane. And their ability to be sort of native to digital money because they're used to, like, using their phones and Venmoing everybody and all this stuff, like, they're gonna imagine a world we can't imagine. That's super exciting. And then when you combine that, here's the crazy thing about what technology is doing to, like, what I would consider monetary opportunity. Technology is a fundamentally deflationary force. Now, so you're taught in Economic 101 that, like, inflation should be 2 or 3% because that's roughly the, like, amount of GDP growth, and, like, you squint at it and you're like, oh, why? And then the professor gives you some answer that you go, okay, that makes sense. But actually, in practice, the more we succeed in technology, the more cost goes down. Like, think about this. Your iPhone 1, like, cost whatever, same amount, roughly $700, and, you know, had a 1 megapixel phone and camera, and, you know, basically had, I don't know, 1,000 pictures. Today, that same phone costs roughly the same amount of money, you know, and has, like, I don't know, a 50 megapixel camera and, like, 500,000 photos. So, like, for the same price. So actually, if you look at what technology is doing, it's driving the cost of everything down. Our economic system doesn't allow that to happen, but this is what we consider the age of abundance. This notion that if you allow intelligence to grow, you allow sort of the monetary policies to work, actually we should get more things. Our standard of living should go up, which is actually what generally has been happening over the last 100 years. And so I don't think that means young people work any less, personally. Like, maybe somebody wants to work 2 days. I think people want to find their calling. They want to do things. I got a chance after a company I you know, went public to take 2 years off. The first 6 months was really fun in an island. And then I was like, what the fuck am I going to do? I'm 20 years old sitting in an island. Like, what am I doing? So, like, people...
You're really good at surfing, maybe.
I did get okay at surfing. So, you know, people want to do things that are meaningful, but what I think the age of abundance allows them to do is take their talents, their opportunities, and put them towards things that they believe in. And that's actually a way more productive society anyways, because GDP is not this thing that's like this fake, let's just, like, put money in the system. It's actually us as people making better things and growing our, like, society. That's actually GDP.
This makes us feel better too. I heard this quote a while ago. I wish to be thoroughly used up when I die, for the harder I work, the more I live.
Dang, that's deep. You too should, like, you know, go into politics. Well, one of them is, you know.
I can see he's got a future.
Yeah, he does. He's good.
He's young.
I'm curious, like, I want to make sure to give some time for the audience here to ask some questions. So, you know, please feel free to raise your hands.
So I'm Mickey. Thank you, Fiona, for all you do for our city. And I remember when I was chairman of Veterans Affairs here, with David Chu and the rest of the gang when I got back from Afghanistan. And you know, you are just the perfect person at the perfect place, the perfect time. I'm not a campaign manager. You really are. You consistently been delivering for the people of San Francisco, the state of California. I love you. You're just fantastic. You're doing wonderful things. And we just need to get behind more Californians who love their families and love our city and love our community. That's all I'll say about Fiona, because the rest speaks. Your track record speaks volumes.
Thank you.
Of course, Nick does all the great works of the city, bringing out great people like this today. We, as a veteran-owned business, are engaged in the deployment of what's called small modular nuclear reactors. So SMNRs, which Westinghouse has, the EVNC, transportable nuclear modular reactors. We have big problems in California with energy. We have big problems with water and so on, but energy, I think, is the biggest problem. When we were in Afghanistan or overseas, power was one of our biggest considerations. Not ammunition, not water, power. So what I'd like to ask is, what strategies has California examined? What can we do to address the energy issues for our data centers, both for our state, which will be the third largest economy soon? Because if we don't have power, the rest is just noise and air and sound and fury signifying nothing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I totally agree with you. I have so many people, pitching me on the latest and the greatest and everything. So I know that you all understand the importance of power. I think if you ask people in office what the top 3 concerns are over the next 5 years, power or energy may not be the top concern, because as elected officials, right, we're about the people, but the people meaning healthcare, education, housing, things that are like the bread and butter, but not necessarily the things that are up here. So that's what I would say is, yes, the more that you all come up with the latest and the greatest, the more you find elected officials who are willing to be like the mayor of Lancaster. Lancaster wants to be the EV hydrogen hub. And so when I find people that are in that space that want to find a home to do a pilot project, I introduce them to the mayor. The mayor says, come on down. What do you need? They're like 5 acres. I'll give it to you. Come on down. But that's what we need. And we don't have that many people yet that are willing to roll out the red carpet for different type of technologies, different ideas. And because, like nuclear is a little bit controversial, but I think, as we all know, and we travel around the world, we understand, nuclear. It doesn't have to be the 3 Mile Islands anymore, right? It's like the little portable, ones that you can bring out. And, the military's been doing that for years. So why aren't we using it? Because now is the time that we really need it in order to, to move this, state forward.
Hey, just thank you for your service, by the way. We appreciate you.
We've got David Lee, who flew up from Los Angeles. Thank you, David, for joining us.
Conversation during the open conference, so lovely to see you here as well. In LA, I have a community for long-haulers investors, and then energy, power, battery is absolutely focus. And you mentioned that we should keep innovating so that it's easier to align with the government. Do you have some recommendations? How do we continue the conversation in a meaningful way with the government? What would the avenue, what would be the engagement, so we can nurture that relationship and then turn something that's more important?
Yeah, so there's 2 things in government, right? There's the elected officials. We are like the A team. And then there's the B team. Those are the long-term government employees. They're the B team because they're going to be there after we're gone. It's true, though, right? And so sometimes you have elected officials that have a vision, that are very strong, that want to see something done and push, the staff. Sometimes they're just lucky that they got elected, and they will just go with the status quo, and then the staff runs everything. So it's kind of a two-prong sometimes, right? Elected officials, if you can find those leaders, those evangelists, those visionaries, you get them to run, they're strong enough where maybe, the best people to run for office are the people that can do something else with their time. This is not their one and only thing. If it is, then they're never gonna kind of take that leadership, be willing to step out there, right? I can go back and be a CPA. I can go back and sit on corporate boards. I can make a lot of money. So to me, I wanna do what needs to be done, push the envelope. I'm usually ahead of the curve. And then bring the staff that I hire along with me that have that, that want to do things outside the box, but not get scared of getting fired. Because in government, if something goes wrong, right, Al? Who's the head? That person is gonna get fired because someone needs to set the example, that shouldn't have been done, we shouldn't have wasted the money, we shouldn't have had a cyber attack. Someone is gonna get the axe. And that's the problem with government officials, is that we're trying to do 10 years, we're trying to do 20 years. Right? 20 years means a retirement. It means healthcare for life. So you can see the timeline is different from tech people who, you're like, why are you it's taking you so long to, get all these payments, digital payments, you get this card, it doesn't even work. It's an old card. That company's gone out of business. But the RFP process sometimes takes a year. Then you hire them, you get everybody on board, you get the tech people, then you get the government people. These people are slow every day. These people are fast every day. And then they're frustrated with each other, and then they're fighting, and then nothing gets done. And then the new technology comes out, and we've wasted all of this time and money, right? And then we have to start all over. So that's the problem. I know all of you are like, why isn't government more technologically savvy? Like, I want to pitch EDD. I want to pitch, DMV. How about the Franchise Tax Board? Well, I have to tell them that, the time horizon is a lot different. And, the level of people that you're going to be dealing with are risk averse for the most part. So I would say find and get behind those elected officials who, want to do things and are going to push. And then you have to maybe educate the staff members that are there to bring them aboard, because they don't want to recommend something that's not tested or something that's not safe, because then they may lose credibility in their agency. And then as you were electing people, try to recommend people that are qualified and talented to be appointed to positions. So all of us can sit on a board or a commission at the local level, at the city, at the state, at the federal level. Apply for those jobs, right? Then you become the experts, and then they start going to you to say, what do you think about this, right? Because you're trusted now, and you're kind of the bridge and the liaison. And then when there's an opening at the Department of, Computer Technology, you're probably going to get the job because you've been advising many of us, and we trust you. You've been around. You're a trusted voice, and then that's how you can make change with people that are kind of visionaries versus appointing people that have just had government experience and have never had outside private sector experience, never had any tech experience. People need to have tech experience now, or tech knowledge. Because otherwise we're going to, this whole government is not going to survive, right?
So I think sometimes people get stuff done out of ignorance. So I know nothing about politics. So why will I even opt into what she just said? As our company got to some size and scale, one of the things, the last thing I wanted to do was deal with politics, and we increasingly got pulled in. First in some of our nonprofit stuff, literally, nation state leaders started asking us to get involved, and then in the U.S. A number of policymakers, and I've kind of got a crash course in the last 2 years or so. So take it for what it's worth. It's nothing, compared to Fiona. But I've learned a few tactical things for those of you who are running companies and trying to affect policy change. One, Fiona implied this, but when you're doing big company deals, you go to the top. What I've actually learned is a lot of times when you're actually trying to affect policy, it's the staffers who are writing it. The staffers really know. So if you want to affect policy change, like go work with some staffers. It's less sexy, but those people know it in and out. When you talk about some of the bills that have changed, whether it's the Genius Act or some of the stuff that's in the Bitcoin regulations right now, like staffers are really sharp, like really. And it's not the leaders are also sharp, but they're busy kind of running the constituency, where the staffers are oftentimes like tasked to be really good at it. And they actually, because generally people want our society to work well, they want good like ideas. So that's one. Staffers are important. Two, I would say lean into, right now, I think there's a lot of really high quality state competitiveness. Like this crazy experiment of America is so fascinating in so many ways. And one of them is, we have a federal system, but we have state competitiveness. And particularly in areas like energy, there is state competition going on right now. And there are certain leaders in certain states that are more forward than others and on different topics. Some are very, very pro, small modular nuclear. They're like, it's just a hot rock, like we've been running it in our subs for a very long time. Others are very concerned about the regulatory side. You have others that are really pro, green energy and solar and wind. Others like, so like the competitiveness in the state, landscape and energy, you should look at. Like competition is good because competition drives innovation. And I think that's actually super interesting for our own government. Like that's so cool. And then, whether it's Fiona or other leaders, one of the things I think is when you have generational changes that are happening with like new leaders, they are building their policies. And so what we've also found very productive is, you'll often find that somebody who's going to be the next governor or going to be the next senator, is really solidifying what their anchor positions are. And so you can spend time and you can kind of workshop, hey, what does that mean for energy? What does that mean for financial services? What does that mean for infrastructure? How does financial inclusion might, people are talking about this side, but they're not talking about the bottom of the pyramid or whatever. And so I think there's a lot of appetite. You just have to kind of know where to look. And it's not necessarily like, probably calling her office and hoping to get a meeting. I don't know, but,
Right. Very well put. Yes, please.
Well, I'm glad that you value government at least, because I find that there's a disconnect between the tech community and government. Like you said, when I started my business, I don't want to have anything to do with government. Well, if you don't have anything to do with government, then what happens when something goes wrong? Government is supposed to be the safety net. We're supposed to be, watching after the consumers, and then we get in there, we start calling hearings, and then we start passing, legislation, and you're like, whoa, why did that happen? So I think we need to communicate better. So that's why I'm here. That's why I thank you all for inviting me and welcoming me, introducing me, because I do think you all are doing amazing things. But if you're not telling us as policymakers, then we're gonna, just come down hard when there's one bad apple or one bad incident.
Right. Please, yes.
So thank you. So I just think that for those of you who have traveled, then the government provides security for economy to thrive, and then you have to have the right policies for the business to thrive. And then, so by us all working together, not until I start to, work with Fiona and to your captain's comment earlier, former Army captain, to witness for someone who's a public servant and has been doing it for so long.
Yeah, here's the interesting thing, right? So like, our company is roughly 400 employees. I think people are worried about job displacement, but I think it's actually, I look at, can our company be 10 times or 100 times as big with maybe 3 times as many employees and 10 times as many agents? Like that's a really different model. And I look at friends of mine who, their companies are a little bit earlier and they may get to our size with 50 employees versus 400. Like that's a totally new model. Yeah. Now the scary part you go is, people think in this zero-sum game where they go, that's less jobs for everybody. It's like, no, that's more companies for everybody. Yes. Like that's so cool, right? So that's where I think the abundance starts happening, and people like you that are early stage, like, you guys will create bigger companies than we will ever do with more productivity, which then just means more GDP. Like one kind of final thought with that, so I was, I was 19 and a half when the first company I was at like filed to go public. And, the team I was on, I was like, kind of engineer 12, and we became 12,000 people. And I look at this crazy run that happened, that when I was there, I don't know, 6, 7 years, that was crazy for the dot-com era. It changed my life, and we look back, and at one point, I think 300 CEOs came out of that company, right? Massive economic, generation. Like, I can only imagine orders of magnitudes that's going to happen for your generation as you guys build companies, because each one of those 50 people that build a company our size are all then going to be CEOs that are going to start more organizations.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, on the other side, so the headquarters, so it was like Fortune 500.
Yeah.
For that. Because even then, they're only running with 20 people.
That's right.
And that was 5 years ago, which I feel like is kind of outdated. Versus today, like I said, like the AI that we speed things up. So yeah, I appreciate that.
So we mentioned a little bit about these agents, which essentially are like tools that are turning into teammates.
Yeah.
How are both of you thinking about implementing agents in your respective workflows?
Is that like my phone
Yeah.
agent? Yeah. Yeah. So like if you call 805 go Fiona, you will hear my agent, me, talk to you and walk you through some of our programs. And you just one program right now, but I want to do it on all like 15 of our programs. But that's how
Cool.
I am trying it, because number one, you can't get people on the phone. Trying to figure it out on a website is probably really difficult. And some older people don't have capabilities to get on the internet. They don't know how to ask ChatGPT, right? So they still want to talk to someone. And so this is kind of the next rendition for people just to get on the phone, just ask questions, and it just keeps answering, what is it used for? Where can you go? How much is it going to cost? What's the interest rate? And I'm pretty surprised that I was like, wow, I'm kind of smart. Yeah. So we should be doing it more, and everyone should be doing it,
So
government.
we think of these models, they're kind of generally in two pieces. You've got the machine learning, which is the training, and then you've got the inference, which is the doing. And a lot of these workloads, they're driving efficiency in one bucket, but they're also driving opportunity in another. So how are you thinking about building agents for Paystand?
Yeah, I mean, it's cool. Like, what's better than one, Fiona? 10 Fionas, right? So I think like we kind of think about it that way. So there, if you look, the AI world is moving really fast. So probably last year in the business side, people thought about co-pilots, and this was really like supercharging your own work. You'd say, like normally I'm a data analyst and, it takes me a lot of time to program something. Now I can, spin it through the model and I can get like intelligent answers back super quick. So for our customers that are finance people, they might be able to get all this smart intelligence about how their money is flowing, who are their best customers, et cetera, right? So that's the co-pilot model. That's kind of well known now. That's kind of how you guys think about ChatGPT. Like, it's just everything at my fingertip. The little bit more bleeding edge is the agent model in businesses. And the agent model is basically saying there are actual functions that you would do at the company, and we're going to assign an agent, an AI, to do that function. And that's really fascinating, because you might be a team of, I don't know, 5 people in the marketing department, and you have a supervisor and 4 people, and now all of a sudden you might have the supervisor who's managing the 4 people who are then managing 5 agents each. Now, like, think about what that productivity is, because they're writing content, they're reaching out to like connect with Fiona, they're doing all of this interactivity autonomously, and they're given a task and a role. And so you still need humans to sort of supervise that work, but it really offloads what you would consider, rote tasks, and that allows the human to move into a higher level function, a supervisor or producer level function.
We get away from the dirty, the dull, and the dangerous.
That's right.
So I think Professor Prasanna Kumar had a question. So Professor PK, please.
First of all, thank you so much for this time and this opportunity. I can clearly see Fiona as an excellent visionary, but I do have this question, 2 questions. One, I see you are successful, very successful. I want to know the secret beyond what there's something that definitely drives you. What drives you? What made you so successful? Number one. Second, I'm in the AI space. I'm serving multiple AI companies on the weekdays. Weekends I teach. Because the world is full of doers who can't teach and teachers who can't do. I'm trying to manage that. By the way, my full name is Tongue Twister. It's P for I go by Professor PK, P for Peter, K for Kingmaker. So I want to know what's your secret for success? Number one. Number two, can we use AI to lower the taxes in California? I can help it.
The first one was a softball. The second one.
I'm open. I'm open to listening to your solutions because you all are, you blow my mind every single day. But I think my success, our secret to success is number one, I am a workaholic and I don't care anymore. I don't care about equality, like balancing my work and personal. They're all the same, and this is what I do. So I'm a workaholic, and I'm an extreme extrovert. So I need people to get energy off of. So I don't want to go sit home and read a book or do yoga or take a vacation. I want to go and learn and see more. Third, I'm very accessible. I give my cell phone out at all different events. Only 2 people call me, but I would give you my cell phone, or I'll give you my agent's cell phone now. But I think those are probably the keys to my success. Is that I'm willing to work harder. You have to have the fire in the belly. For all of you who are founders, ultimately it's you. At 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, that's worried about everything. And if you don't have that, you're just not going to be successful in what anything that you do. So,
Awesome.
Well, guys, this has been a guest. We always want to make sure that we're hyper valuable to our delicious brains here. So maybe can you share maybe a website or what's next, or how can our community support you?
okay, FionaMaw.com is my website. I am on all social media. I post myself, which takes a lot of time. Like today, I didn't have time to do that, but I will be back. So just share and like and, sign up for my website so that you can get my newsletters and my events coming up. FionaMaw.com.
I think it's so cool that she's just here engaging. So it sounds like she's got something big on the horizon. So first, just thank you. Yeah, maybe something's coming. So I'm easy to access. You can find me, Jeremy Almond, on Twitter/X, on LinkedIn. If you're a company that wants to be able to move your money better, cheaper, faster, so you can run more efficiently, you can go to Paystand.com. If you're interested in our philanthropic efforts, you can go to Paystand.org. And if you're interested in sort of content that we produce around sort of economic empowerment for businesses using open finance, we have a small pod called Redefined that you can find on YouTube and Spotify and wherever the heck those things are. So, but it's not as cool as this, guys.
Thank you both. So speaking of, we talked a little bit about longevity. On October 10, we're going to be hosting our second annual longevity conference. So check out agelessevolution.agelessevolutionsummit.com.
Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of the night.
Yeah, it's a new industry that we're pretty much found ocean minerals. That's basically in the Pacific. There's an area the size of Europe that is covered in these rocks of nickel, cobalt, copper, and manganese, so battery metals. Also, strategic. All industries, weaponry, manufacturing, cobalt and nickel are probably the most important base metals for the future for energy transition away from fossil fuels. So you mentioned batteries, and so like a Tesla battery, there are different chemistries, but the main one is maybe 8 parts nickel, 1 part cobalt, manganese, lithium, 1 part everything else, and highly nickel intensive. Our company basically controls and is developing the world's largest resource of these metals that can supply America, get us wholly independent from global supply chains, which now the Chinese completely monopolize the kind of control of the mines, of the resource, as well as majority of the processing, which we're working with the government here, which we've recently pivoted to the U.S. and to NOAA as our new regulator, away from kind of the international UN body that governs international territory, which is where this resource lies. And so made a kind of strategic shift to the U.S. You may have seen a recent executive order a month ago or 2 months ago about ocean mining, and that was basically in regards to us. And yeah, it's
Is it good executive order or bad executive order?
full support from the U.S. government and to onshore these metals, process abroad, initially in Japan and South Korea, maybe Indonesia, and work on bringing back onshore. Plant in Texas, multiple plants, maybe one day in California, but there's kind of a lot of red tape. Maybe you can help with that. It's a life cycle 10x lower environmental cost than sourcing these metals from, for example, Indonesian rainforests. That is like total destruction, monopolized by the Chinese. That is, most biodiverse habitats on Earth. And
It's also really cool that it's a circular economy. So if you think of this huge production on a boat that has a long vacuum, is able to bring up these rocks about the size of a football, right?
potatoes.
Okay, give or take. Small football. Yeah. And then being able to not just extract these important these minerals to be able to use in batteries and computers and all the rest, but think about being able to return that computer when you're done with it, and then they can extract that again.
Yeah.
So it's a sustainable philosophy.
Yeah, so the thing about these metals is you can recycle them, but to get to the place where the world recycles these base metals, which are four of the most important, we need to inject a lot more into the global economy, and they have to come from somewhere for energy transition and global industry. So they've got to come from somewhere, and it's a matter of alternatives. We're quite a controversial company. It's been a rough ride going public over the past few years because the NGOs we've been at war with that spread a lot of misinformation. We funded the largest ocean environmental study in history, about $300 million of private capital, and are in an open source manner sharing a petabyte of data, which is about a third or a quarter of the Library of Congress in data scale. We're sharing it with the world, open source, universities, institutions, scientists to help add to the scientific process, make discoveries, and develop this resource for the good of humanity. And we're public, TMC, on NASDAQ, doing well.
Is there a website you could share?
Yeah, it's called the Metals Company. I mean, I'll throw some.
And for what it's worth, Andre told me to buy his stock in January at $1.50, and it just cracked $7.
So
Yeah.
it's gone up several times in 6 months.
Yeah.
But this is not investment advice for anybody filming. Just to keep him out of trouble, right?
Everyone is starting to understand that,
Yeah, thank you.
rare earth materials, are the future, right? And we're getting locked out of it right now unless we start doing something. And the military knows it the best. So Colonel Cook, who was in Congress and now he's on the San Bernardino Board of Supervisors, he's always telling me, minerals, we need to get those minerals. Go get them.
He's right.
Yeah.
I know.
Well, and I think one of the things that's exciting is, I've been in the Valley for a while, and, for the last decade or so, a lot of technology builders were kind of building incremental things, like a software that, makes it so I can get my pet food like 5 minutes faster is nice, but I think what I'm seeing is like a sea change also just in innovative entrepreneurs who are building like real companies, real GDP creation, real abundance creation that are actually like real hard science. And for a long time, Silicon Valley and sort of, I think California was known. We, invented the semiconductor here. We invented a lot of the hard science that's changed the world. And I think one of the things that's just exciting for me now is seeing there's a shift back to sort of hard science, hard technology, hard infrastructure, because, this is where I think real ambition happens again. And this is where you get exciting, young people to see. So this is like, I don't know what's in the water all of a sudden, but there is a real culture change that's happening in Silicon Valley to sort of build ambitious things that's real hard science that I think actually is going to have a meaningful change for our planet. So
disrupting legacy industries like mining, which are very traditional, set in their ways. That there's a lot of potential to apply AI, digital twins, your own. I actually have a friend that's she's from a German kind of industrial family, and she started a small VC, started coming out here to meet with the PayPal mafia, and her theme of her conference in Europe is how do we disrupt legacy industry in Europe, which has fallen behind these family enterprises with tech from Silicon Valley, and it's very successful. Now she's maybe the most important VC in Europe because of that.
Very cool.
very good.
Ajay, what do you think?
It's amazing. Thank you.